He is.
That I have
Donald Trump's like still going.
For a life of being abused by the fake news media.
I can tell you, I already know, by the way, Dan Mandis in for Vince Coglianese, I can already tell you what the media is going to say about this speech. He's been talking, he's like the Energizer Bunny. I mean, he has been speaking for nonstop for 30 minutes. Now, the media will tell you, and by the way, very familiar themes. I promise you, you're not missing anything. This is nothing he hasn't said before. The media is going to say that the former president is rambling and that he's unfocused.
We'll immediately bring prices down starting on day one. We will.
But see, here's the thing, is that he's absolutely focused. And we do have to keep saying the same thing because we need to drive the point home as to what Kamala Harris has done to our country. And by the way, I will also tell you that the same media and the same pundits that will blame or say that Donald Trump is rambling and repeating himself and the same old, those are the same media outlets that would ignore the fact that Kamala Harris was literally giving the same speech day after day after day, right down to utilizing the same words. So I can tell you that's how this is going to be covered by the media. I like what he's doing in the sense that he is driving the points home that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have destroyed our economy. They're allowing terrorists into our country. As a border czar, she completely destroyed our nation's sovereignty. We talk about inflation. We speak about the challenges that the American people are having day after day after day. And he talks about the job creation or lack thereof. And he also has mentioned all of the things that he has done right in his 4 years in office. And so my name is Dan Mandis, again, in for Vince Coglianese, and we are going to rejoin Donald Trump's press conference in New Jersey. By the way, you can always follow me on Twitter and X and Facebook and all the socials at Dan Mandis Show.
Relationship, and Kerry would go up there and he'd leave so happy, but they don't do anything. They just talk. They said, oh yeah, we're going to do that. Oh, as soon as we get to it. In the meantime, they're building a coal plant every week, but now I hear it's 2 coal plants a week. And we're dying for energy. We don't have energy, and they're getting set for the AI because they're going to create so much electricity, and we're not going to be able to do it. But you'll get do it if I have it, because that's an emergency. We have to be able to compete with China and other countries that are able to create new energy if they want to, and they're going to want to, and they do want to. But they're building at least 1 coal plant a week. Germany, as you know, went a little bit like us, and that was the end of Angela because their whole economy crashed, and their new government is building coal plants all over the place. They're building brand new coal plants, nuclear plants, and other things because Germany was going to fail. So why are we following these countries that tried it and failed? And they're smart countries. They tried it, they failed. Why are we doing this? Why aren't we creating great energy plants, great sources of energy, instead of playing this game with wind that is ruining everything, killing all your birds, destroying the fields, all these gorgeous fields. You got windmills all over the place, and you have birds. You want to see a bird cemetery? Just go under a windmill. You see thousands of birds dead. The bald eagle, if you kill an eagle, they put you in jail for years. And yet these windmills knock them out like nothing, and nothing happens to the people. Now, it's a green scam. It's a shame. Look, I'm all for clean energy. I want clean water. I want clean air. But you can't destroy your country over it. You just can't do that. We want to stop wasteful spending and big government special interest giveaways. You have giveaways. You have some of these people that are giving. Look, they're not giving millions and millions of dollars to politicians because they like their policy. They're giving it because they made deals. They're going to take over lots of different things in our country. They're going to build windmills as an example. They're going to build big solar fields that take up half the desert, massive solar fields. And I'm a big fan of solar, but it can't fire our plants. It's not going to fire our plants. Fire up those plants. We got to get them going. And the only thing that can do that is fossil fuel right now. And the only thing that can make electricity, which we all want, is right now fossil fuel and nuclear. And nuclear has its place, a very big place in our country, very big place. China's going with nuclear. France has been going with nuclear for many years. We want to end the Biden-Harris electrical vehicle mandate. We have to get rid of the electric vehicle mandate. And look, Elon endorsed me strongly, most powerful endorsement. He said it 3 or 4 times the other night during our little chat. But a chat that was very well listened to and attended. We know that, right? It broke every single record, I think, in history. And he's a great guy. But I told him, I said, I have one problem. I'm all for the electric car, but it's a very small percentage. I think the electric car is incredible. I think what you've done is incredible. But some people are going to want gasoline-propelled cars. They're going to want hybrids. They're going to want other types of cars. And Elon, they're going to have to do that. And he understands that fully. And I think he was amazed by this electric vehicle mandate. They want it for trucks, too. If you do it for trucks, you're not going to have any. You talk about a supply chain problem. A truck going from New York to Los Angeles, if it's electric, will have to stop 6 times for long periods of time. If you have diesel fuel, it goes all the way, and you can even come a piece of the way back before you have to reload. And with diesel, the truck gets lighter because you're using up the fuel. With the electric, it stays at a heavy weight. An electric truck is 2.5 times heavier than what we would call our traditional trucks. And a man from a company said to me, sir, I've been buying trucks. For 50 years, I've been buying them, and every single year they got better and bigger and stronger and more powerful and more efficient, more fuel efficient. And now we build apartments in the truck, sir, and you would be proud to stay in those apartments. And then I say, I don't know if I would. But I know exactly what he meant, those big, he said, it's incredible, the trucks. I said, who builds the best truck? He didn't tell me. He said, they all do. You have 4 companies, 5 companies. They all do, sir. They build great ones. He said, but for 50 years, they got better. Every year, I started off with 1 truck. I said, how many trucks do you have now? 27,000. I said, 27,000, and all big ones. He's the biggest. This is the biggest. He said, for 50 years I've been buying, and every single year they got better, more efficient, stronger. He said, if they make us buy electric trucks, we will go back 70 years because the truck is worse than the one we had 50 years ago. And he said, I won't partake in it. They want the truckers, the trucking industry to do that. One other thing, the truck is heavier, and the battery is much larger than the tanks. And the battery would take up about half of the payload. Think of that. But just as importantly, the battery and all that goes into electric is much heavier. The truck it weighs 2.5 times more than a normal truck fired up by diesel. And he said, if that's the case, sir, you would have to rebuild every single bridge and road in America because the weight is so enormous. It wouldn't be able to go on the bridges and all of the different weight-bearing roads in America. I said, did you explain this to the people? I mean, a 5-year-old child, if he was hearing these things, it doesn't go far. It takes too much room. You don't have any room left for anything. It's almost the whole thing would be carrying a battery. Does anybody explain this to these people? We do explain it. They know it very well. At the end of the meeting, they say, we don't care. Just start making your electric truck. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do it, he said. So we're going to repeal all that. We're going to repeal Kamala's regulatory onslaught, saving households an estimated $5,000 a year at a minimum. The massive tax cuts and no tax on tips. We're going to make sure it gets done. She's not going to get it done. She didn't hear about it until I said it, and then she went out and she went and did it. And the other thing, no tax on Social Security. We're not going to have seniors who have been decimated by inflation pay tax on Social Security, and we'll get through it through growth. We have tremendous growth potential in this country, but not with these people running it, because all they're going to do is take away, and they want to take away your growth and your growth potential. Again, I say it all the time, we're a nation in decline. We're a failing nation. Right now, we're a failing nation, and we're going to soon be a great nation again. That's going to happen. Another thing we're going to do, having to do with a lot of reasons, a lot of things, and the economy in particular, we're going to seal the border. We're going to stop the invasion. We're going to send the illegal aliens back home. We're going to bring down the cost of health care and housing. We're going to make sure that Social Security is not going to be increased in terms of years where people have to wait much longer. I mean, we have an obligation to take care of these people. And just so you know, I didn't do it in 4 years. I never even thought about doing it in 4 years. And they probably don't want to do it, but they're going to have no choice because a lot of the people that are coming in are being signed into Medicare. They're being signed into Social Security. And it's just going to explode. And it's going to happen very fast, and it's going to be very ugly. It's not going to happen with us. We're going to open up tracts of federal land for housing construction. We desperately need housing for people who can't afford what's going on now. And when we open it up and we take off some of the restrictions and regulations, you know, in California, 50% the cost of a house is regulations. They have to adhere to regulations that bring the cost of the house up by 50%. We're going to bring back our supply chains to stop costly supply chain disruptions. We have tremendous disruptions. I have it all the time, and I think you do too. We order things, and I keep saying, well, when's it getting here? Sir, there's a supply chain disruption. And, I mean, you end up getting stuff like 3 months late now. I don't know, all these geniuses over here, I think we can say that. I'm not sure that you're necessarily as much into it, but they are. And I will say that very often, we have problems with supply chains where I'm waiting for things for weeks and weeks, and I say, by the way, whatever happened to it? Supply chain, sir, it's not coming in. And it's a terrible thing. Nobody ever thought a thing like that would happen to our country. We're going to restore peace and stability all throughout the world. And you all know Viktor Orban. He's the Prime Minister of Hungary, and a very tough man. He's a good man, but he's a tough man. And they asked him, what do we need to stop all of the wars with Israel? What do we need to stop the wars in Russia and Ukraine and all the other wars that are starting? He said, when President Trump was here, we had no wars. We didn't have Russia lining up at the borders to go and attack Ukraine. We would have never had Hamas because Hamas had no money, because Iran had no money. I said to China and everybody else, if you buy from Iran, you can't do business in the United States. And I'm not looking to be bad to Iran. We're going to be friendly, I hope, with Iran. Maybe, but maybe not. But we're going to be friendly, I hope. We're going to be friendly, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. They can't have a nuclear weapon. And we were all set to make sure that they don't have a nuclear weapon, because once they do, it's a whole different world. It's a whole different negotiation. But Viktor Orban said, if you put Trump in, nothing's going to happen. Everyone's going to be peaceful, because they were afraid of Trump. Now, I don't like saying that I said that. I would say maybe they respected Trump. But he said they were afraid of Trump. They didn't know where he was coming from, and they were really afraid of him. They're not afraid of these people. And being afraid isn't so bad, but I would say more importantly, they respected me. But he didn't use that word. He said they were afraid of Trump. And we would have not had any problems with China and Taiwan. We wouldn't have had any problems with Ukraine and Russia. We wouldn't have any problems with anything. But we will stop inflation. We will make America affordable again. And we're going to bring back the American dream. We have all these young people that are coming out of schools, colleges, everything else, and they're not going to have the American dream. They don't even think about the American dream. Right now, they just think about survival. And I just want to end by saying we have tremendous potential in this country. We can do amazing things, and we can do them fast. We have to get the criminals out. We have to get them out immediately and fast and tough. We're going to rely on our local police. Our local police law enforcement has been so incredible. And they know. Somebody said, how will you get them out? How will you know? The local police know the name and serial number and middle name and last name and where they come from of every single bad guy that's come into our country. And we're going to rely on local police, and we're going to make sure that they have immunity from prosecution because, frankly, our police are treated horribly. They're not allowed to do their job. You know that better than anybody. They're not allowed to do their job. If they were allowed to do their job, we wouldn't have cities that have crime rates. You look at Chicago. On the 4th of July weekend in Chicago, think of this, 117 people were shot and 17 died. Afghanistan isn't anything like that. And speaking of Afghanistan, the single most embarrassing day in the history of our country. And yesterday I saw they gave $85 billion worth of brand new military equipment that I rebuilt the military. So this was equipment that, to a large extent, I bought. But brand new, and they had a parade yesterday, a beautiful parade. We were going to get out with dignity and strength. We were there for 21 years. And we were going to keep Bagram because it's 1 hour away. Bagram is this massive Air Force base that I visited. It's a massive base. And we were going to keep it because it's 1 hour, not because of Afghanistan, but because it's 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. And they were showing it off yesterday, but the fact is that China now controls Bagram. China, can you imagine that? And we left. We were going to stay there. We were going to keep it. We were going to get out with dignity, strength. We were going to take our soldiers out last, not first. We took our soldiers out first. I dealt with Abdul, and he's still the leader. Strong man, smart man. But he understood that if he did anything, because we were losing a lot of people to the snipers, and under Obama, it was terrible, it was brutal, they'd be walking around and just get shot, and that was the end of them. Our people, and other people too, civilians. And I let him know that if you do that, we're going to hit you so hard like you've never been hit before. But why, he said, do you send me a picture of my home? Why? Why do you send me a picture of my home? I said, you'll have to figure that one out later. But I said, we're going to have to hit you people so hard like we've never hit anybody. And he understood. And he said, yes, Your Excellency, I understand. He called me Your Excellency. I wonder if he calls that to Biden. I doubt it, right? But he understood that, and he respected us. And for 18 months, not one American soldier was killed. Not one. And then I left because of an election where I got millions of more votes than we did in 2016. We got millions of more, from 10 to 12 million votes more. Think of that. No president has ever gone with that kind of an election uptick. Usually a president will get less. President Obama got less, much less, his second time, but he won. But he got much less. We got 10 to 12 million votes more, and that's not including other votes that we can talk about at another day. But this is their votes, 10 to 12 million more. And we left, and that's when all the problems started. We didn't have these problems. We would have never had a problem with Abdul. We would have never had a problem with anybody, frankly. And I'd have to say, you're looking at things behind me. They did a nice job. Wow, I haven't gotten to see. That's good. I don't like the tags very much. Look at that, up 46% eggs. Wow.
That is former President Donald Trump. My name is Dan Mandis on WMAL. Listening to his press conference, his much-awaited press conference, and as the president is going to a visual presentation here on the radio, it's a good time for us to take a time out. But 5:29, right here on WMAL, Dan Mandis in for Vince Coglianese. So far, the questions from the reporters have been pretty standard. No one has asked the former president about this incredible female Secret Service agent who apparently abandoned her post to breastfeed without permission at Donald Trump's rally in North Carolina. Coming up next, we're going to speak to Susan Crabtree all about that. She's got the story detailed straight ahead on WMAL. 5:36 on WMAL. My name is Dan Mandis in for Vince Coglianese. Always appreciate the opportunity to fill in. So Donald Trump, his news conference does continue. And I'm just going to be honest with you, a lot of the same themes that we have heard many times before, the president rightly hitting the same very familiar themes. One of the things that he said is that, what is he going to do on day one? He said, well, it's a tie. Number one, we're going to close the border. And then number two, we're going to drill, baby, drill. Now, the reason why that's so important is because what are the two biggest issues that the American people are going to be voting on in November? It is illegal immigration and the southern border as well. So the president restating the themes of his campaign. He is going to be accused of going long, of rambling, just like we've seen before. And again, this will be the same media that criticizes the former president, yet they have nothing to say about Kamala Harris, literally doing the same speech like right down to the words, the same speech in many different cities, and it's just, for Kamala Harris, way too rehearsed. For Donald Trump, speaking extemporaneously, taking reporters' questions as well. And so this is a president right now, Kamala Harris, a vice president, who refuses to take questions, refuses to speak to reporters, very rehearsed, giving the same speeches over and over again in different cities. Meanwhile, Donald Trump speaking extemporaneously for hours and hours at a time in different cities and states across America. And he is also driving the point home what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done to our country from an economic standpoint and also from an immigration standpoint. Want to welcome into the program now. It's going to be Susan Crabtree, and national political correspondent with Real Clear Politics. Susan, appreciate you coming on with us. And I can't believe that I'm reading this story from you. A female Secret Service agent abandons her post to breastfeed with no permission at Donald Trump's rally in North Carolina. Did that really happen?
I honestly couldn't believe it myself when I started my phone was starting to blow up about this last night. And I thought, is this a hoax? Because I know the Secret Service is not my best friend right now. They have been very antagonistic, but have been cooperating with me and trying to give me timely statements in the last, I would say, 48 hours. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you about this because so many trusted sources are telling me that this happened. And I want to say from the get-go that I've been criticized for the issue of breastfeeding, for taking issue with the fact that the Secret Service agent needed to breastfeed. Well, okay. I am a big proponent of breastfeeding, and I had my own issues at the White House, and it was very cumbersome and awkward. And so I am the last person that would criticize someone for trying to breastfeed. But there is a time and a place for that. And 5 minutes before the president or a former president arrives at a site, it's a very tense moment. I've been to many of these arrivals, and I've been the pool reporter, White House pool reporter we do this for the White House press pool. You have a lead reporter, and those moments before the arrival are incredibly stressful. You are taking notes. All the Secret Service are on high alert. They want it to go well and smooth. And the site agent, who is in charge of all the security at the event, went on a final walkthrough, and he found out that one of his post standers, that's what they call this, most Secret Service are just stationed and are at a particular place, and that's their job, to stand there and watch and make sure nothing happens and make sure there's no threats to the president, was simply missing, and went around. The site agent went around and did a walkthrough and went into the hard room, what it's called. It's a room set aside for emergencies if the president would get hurt in any way, have some type of health issue, or for official Secret Service work. That's where this agent was, unannounced, in there right before, they call it Bravo. It's 5 minutes before the president arrived. Unbelievable.
So, I'm going to ask a dumb question, but what is the policy? If you are a Secret Service agent, you need to breastfeed. What's the policy? You would think that the policy would be that you need to tell somebody that you're going to breastfeed. I feel like it's a dumb question, but I've got to ask this question too, and I'm sorry for asking this, but was her child with her, or was she breastfeeding into a pump?
Her child was with her, and that's another part of the problem. I do not know the policy on breastfeeding. I know that I've asked my different sources who came to me with this, and they're saying, if you are on assignment, you're not supposed to be breastfeeding. You make other arrangements, and I had to make those same. Every working mom has to make those arrangements where you have to cart a little thermos with you and take it to your refrigerator at work, and all of these things have to happen. But you cannot be on that assignment and doing this. And from what I understand, this is not a young infant. This is not a newborn. So it was there are some at that age of a child. I'm told that the child is 2 years old, and the child was with her and had some family members bring the child in, and no one begrudges. Like I said, no one begrudges breastfeeding, and it is a personal choice of how old you want to breastfeed child. But it's the problem. There's another security lapse here that two family members were able to come into this hard room site that were unpinned. And that means that they were not cleared by the Secret Service. Anybody who is going to be around the president needs to either have a hard pass or be a Secret Service agent, or they have to have usually it takes at least 24 hours for you have to submit your Social Security number and have them run a background check on you to be admitted near the president. And this is just the fact that these two individuals weren't. They were supposedly escorted in by an event staff, probably from the campaign, that was also not pinned. So there are a number of issues here that this raises that the Secret Service rank and file that heard about this last night were just outraged by it. And it happened 1 month and 1 day after the assassination attempt. And the very same day that acting Secret Service Director Ron Rowe gave a pep talk, all-hands pep talk to the Secret Service, saying we're going to get your budget bigger. We have people on board now. We're not going to make you do more with less. That's a mantra that's been for decades, that the Secret Service has to do more with less. And we are going to fix this broken system because we cannot fail. We cannot fail the American people. We have to maintain continuity of government.
I guess also, Susan, what confuses me, Susan Crabtree, a national political correspondent with Real Clear Politics, talking about yet another security breach with the Secret Service. I mean, not to belabor the point, but if you are a Secret Service agent and your job literally is to, number one, keep the president safe or the former president safe, and number two, part of your job description is to take a bullet for the president if shooting starts, then, I mean, it seems to me like this agent actually, if something had happened, this baby's life is in danger.
Yes, if there's some kind of the chances of that happening because they're in the hard room, probably not all that high, but they could have had it on spot. I mean, the fact that she was not at her post 5 minutes before is a huge issue. And I had just done a different story 2 days beforehand, talking about how these agents on the President Trump's detail. Now, this person was from the Atlanta field office, supplementing President Trump's detail. But there's all these recriminations. There's rancor within the Secret, all areas of the Secret Service Trump detail. There's formal accusations of conflicts of interest and improper sexual relationships on the detail. I mean, it goes. There's sleeping incidents. Someone took pictures of two agents sleeping at Mar-a-Lago. They circulated them for a laugh. They were turned into headquarters. This was 2 months before the assassination attempt. All of this rancor was going on the Trump detail. And now we have this incident. Now, I really think it's a top to bottom problem of discipline and hiring decisions. They're lowering their standards because they need to hire more people because they're stretched too thin, especially during the campaign season. But, you need to instill discipline. And the same day Ron Rowe was saying, we need to do better, folks, and we're committed to doing better. This is what happened that night, just hours later.
Let me ask you, Susan, is the problem, I mean, clearly there's a lot of problems, but this keeps happening with Trump's detail. So is it that they're, for whatever reason, more lackadaisical because it's Donald Trump? Is it political? Does Joe Biden or Kamala Harris have these same problems? It just seems to be happening on Trump's detail. Am I wrong?
I've heard other people suggest that. I don't believe that it's true. I think it's across the board. For instance, you had an incident that I broke part of the story about in late April. a woman, a special agent, had a mental breakdown at Joint Base Andrews about an hour before Kamala Harris was supposed to take off in Air Force Two, and she had a gun on her in a holster, and she physically attacked her boss, her superior. And there were other aspects of the story that were just unbelievable. She was throwing maxi pads at a supervisor. So people said she was hiding behind a curtain. People say this woman had other complaints about her mental health before, but this is that particular person. I know for a fact. I drilled down into that story, and this was a DEI hire, as you know, that, and I don't say that lightly. That Director Cheadle, Kimberly Cheadle, she made a huge priority for diversity, equity, and inclusion hires, especially for women. She had signed a pledge that she was going to get 30% of the workforce by 2030 to be women. And from what I understand, she had already made it to 24%, 25% by the time she left, when she resigned last month. So Director Cheadle, I found multiple sources telling me that she actually approved and pushed this woman through the training center when she was head of the training center, even though she was not meeting the standards, the internal Secret Service standards for training. And people were complaining about her mental health back then, a few years ago. So this is a problem. They're trying to hire too many people and lowering the standards. I've heard that they don't do well in terms of their questions about mental health. They're giving people a pass left and right in the hiring decisions. And it's not the elite. Some of them, of course, many of the rank and file are doing just admirable, amazing work, and they should be revered. But there's some of the in the rank and file, like this woman, who obviously aren't using good judgment.
So I guess the question is, we've heard people say that the Secret Service needs to be just torn down and rebuilt. I mean, I guess the question is, and we've only got about 2 minutes left, but Susan, what is the answer here?
Well, I think that the 8th floor management they just really ought to clean house at that level. For years, and I've covered this dating back to 2012, there have been disciplinary problems, and there's sort of this, what I call and others call, a culture of CYA, and just basically obfuscating and lying to Congress and trying to cover up their mistakes instead of owning them and moving forward and improving. And I also do believe that they do need a bigger budget. Their budget is 3.1 or 2 million, a billion a year, and that's like the cost of a stealth bomber, according to Ron Kessler, who writes about this. He's written several books about this, and we talk constantly. I do think but it needs a leadership change. You have to have a change in the culture, and it has to be more disciplined. Give more people more money. Raise the salary so that you can retain people, because people are going off to the Air Marshal Service from the Secret Service, other DHS entities. They're not retaining the best and the brightest.
All right, Susan. Well, it's once again talking about the issues with the Secret Service. I appreciate you keeping us up to date on this story. If there's a change, or as the investigation continues, will you come back and let us know?
Absolutely. I really appreciate your attention to this and your devotion to the subject, because it's about our continuity of government.
And for Vince Coglianese, Dan Mandis here. Mark Levin, the great one, is coming up next. By the way, don't forget, tomorrow morning, Larry O'Connor, it's O'Connor and Company. They'll have all the great sound bites from Donald Trump and his still-going speech in New Jersey. Got a lot more straight ahead with Mark Levin next on WMAL.